The holographic projection filled the cavernous United Nations Assembly Hall, casting an ethereal blue-green light that made the gathered world leaders look like ghostly apparitions. At its center, the Zorn Grand Executor towered, a being of crystalline complexity, its body a living lattice of interconnected geometric shapes that shifted and realigned with each movement. Captain Alina Rodriguez sat near the back of the assembly, her posture rigid, eyes never leaving the alien entity. To those who didn't know her, she appeared calm. Those who understood her history knew the inferno burning just beneath her composed exterior. 15 years earlier, her parents, renowned xenobiologists, Dr. Maria Rodriguez and Dr. James Chen, had disappeared during a classified research expedition. The official report spoke of a communication accident, but Alina knew better. The memories were etched into her soul like acid-burned scars. Classified documents with critical sections redacted, hushed conversations, the subtle pressure from government agencies to move on. The Zorn Grand Executor's translator crackled to life, its voice a blend of mathematical precision and cold contempt. Inhabitants of Earth designation. Sol 3. Your technological capabilities are inferior. Your social structures are primitive. Your planetary resources are inefficiently managed. A pause. The crystal-like form of the alien shifted, creating intricate patterns that seemed to mock human complexity. The Zorn Collective has evaluated your species. You will surrender all planetary sovereignty, submit to total cultural integration, and provide comprehensive resource allocation to our interstellar infrastructure. Resistance is mathematically improbable. Survival is contingent on complete submission. Around Alina, diplomatic representatives from various nations sat in stunned silence. Some looked terrified. Others appeared ready to capitulate. A few seemed to be calculating potential diplomatic compromises. Not Alina. Her mind drifted to the hidden research her parents had been conducting before their disappearance. Fragments of conversation, encrypted data fragments, whispered warnings about something humanity wasn't prepared to understand. Something the alien civilizations feared. The Zorn continued, its voice growing more absolute with each syllable. You have precisely 72 standard galactic periods to prepare for total integration. Any resistance will be met with immediate and complete eradication. Your military capabilities are less than 0.03% of our collective defensive potential. Something inside Alina snapped. She stood up, her movement cutting through the diplomatic paralysis like a knife. The holographic projection momentarily flickered, the Zorn Grand Executor seeming to focus its alien perception directly on her. The room fell silent. You ask for war. Her voice was low, controlled, each word deliberately measured. Get ready for a war that'll haunt you forever. A hidden camera, positioned discreetly in the assembly hall, captured the moment. Within seconds, her statement would be transmitted across every human communication network, social media, government channels, private messaging systems. The Zorn Grand Executor's crystalline form seemed to pause, its geometric patterns momentarily destabilizing. The closest approximation of confusion an entity of its nature could display. Alina Rodriguez wasn't just speaking for herself. She was speaking for every human who had ever been underestimated. For her lost parents. For a species that had survived ice ages, world wars, pandemics, and countless other extinction-level challenges. As she stood there, the first sparks of a resistance were already spreading. In underground research facilities, in military bases, in university laboratories, and in the hearts of billions, a singular thought began to take root. Humanity was about to show the universe exactly what it was capable of. The war had begun. Deep beneath the streets of Shanghai, Dr. Marcus Chin's fingers danced across a holographic interface that would have seemed like pure science fiction just weeks ago. Project Prometheus was no longer a theoretical concept. It was humanity's lifeline. The underground facility stretched for kilometers, a testament to decades of secret preparation. What appeared to be abandoned subway tunnels and decommissioned military bases now hummed with an energy that would have terrified the Zorn Collective had they known. Initialization sequence confirmed, Marcus muttered, watching as quantum processors came online. Each machine was a marvel of human ingenuity, adaptive systems that could rewrite their own programming faster than any alien technology could predict. Upstairs, in the United Nations Emergency Command Center, a transformation was happening that defied every previous model of international cooperation. Countries that had been bitter rivals mere months ago now worked with a synchronicity that seemed almost supernatural. General Catherine Suzuki, the newly appointed Global Defense Coordinator, stood before a massive strategic map. Her finger traced potential invasion routes, her mind working through scenarios that would make traditional military strategists weep. "We're not just preparing for a war," she said to her international team. "We're rewriting the entire concept of planetary defense." In Silicon Valley, tech companies that once competed now shared classified research. Artificial intelligence algorithms designed for everything from social media to financial trading were being repurposed into predictive warfare systems. Every line of code, every machine learning model became a potential weapon. Universities emptied as researchers were recalled to secret facilities. Students who once dreamed of academic careers now found themselves on the front lines of humanity's most important project, survival. Marcus Chen's team worked on something far beyond conventional weapons. Project Prometheus was about adaptability, creating technologies that could evolve faster than any alien threat could anticipate. Nano-augmentation systems that could reconfigure human biology. Quantum communication networks that made traditional encryption look like child's play. In a converted automotive plant in Detroit, assembly lines that once produced cars now manufactured modular combat systems. Each piece of equipment was designed with multiple potential configurations, able to be repurposed in seconds. Retired engineers worked alongside teenage programmers. Former Special Forces operators trained civilians in adaptive combat techniques. The entire concept of military preparedness was being reinvented. "We're not just building weapons," Marcus explained to a group of senior researchers. "We're creating a living, breathing defensive organism. Humanity itself is our ultimate weapon." Underground communication networks spread across the globe. Every human became a potential intelligence asset. Social media platforms were transformed into encrypted communication channels. The line between civilian and soldier blurred completely. In orbital research stations, scientists worked on technologies that would make the Zorn Collective's most advanced systems look primitive. Adaptive materials that could change properties in milliseconds. Communication systems that could transmit information through quantum entanglement. Catherine Suzuki reviewed the global preparedness reports. The numbers were beyond anything in human history. Manufacturing had been completely retooled. Every industrial capacity was now focused on a single goal: survival. "They think we're primitive," she said to Marcus Chen during a secure video conference. "They have no idea what we're capable of." As the Zorn Collective continued to prepare for what they believed would be a simple planetary subjugation, humanity was transforming. Not just its technology, but its very essence. The preparation was more than military. It was evolutionary. The war had not yet begun, but humanity was already several steps ahead. The attack began at exactly 3:14:59 Universal Time, a deliberate mathematical provocation that would later be recognized as a quintessentially human moment of strategic poetry. Captain Elena Rodriguez sat in a neural interface chamber, her consciousness simultaneously existing in multiple digital and physical spaces. Around her, a team of the world's most brilliant psychological warfare specialists prepared for an assault that would redefine interstellar conflict. Dr. Aisha Kapoor, the lead cognitive warfare architect, adjusted a series of quantum-entangled neural networks. "Target acquisition confirmed," she murmured, her fingers dancing across holographic interfaces that seemed to breathe with living information. The Zorn Collective's communication networks were considered impenetrable, a web of quantum-encrypted channels that had never been successfully breached by any known species. They were wrong. Humanity's first strike was not a missile, not a laser, not a physical weapon of any kind. It was information. Millions of carefully crafted data packets simultaneously invaded every Zorn communication channel. Each packet was a work of psychological warfare, adaptive algorithms that could reshape themselves in real time, exploiting the most minute psychological vulnerabilities in the alien collective consciousness. On the primary Zorn command ship, Executor Vexnar watched in growing horror as their supposedly secure networks began to destabilize. The first transmission appeared, a holographic battle simulation that was simultaneously everywhere and nowhere. The simulation showed impossible scenarios. Zorn military units defeated by strategies that defied their fundamental understanding of warfare. Each projection was a masterpiece of psychological manipulation, using the Zorn's own predictive algorithms against them. One moment, a Zorn battle group would be advancing. The next, they would find themselves surrounded by enemies that shouldn't exist. Tactical formations would dissolve into chaos, triggered by minuscule information cascades that played on deeply buried psychological triggers. Alina's consciousness flowed through the networks like liquid mercury. She wasn't just sending information. She was conducting a symphonic assault on the alien psyche. Dr. Kapoor's team had spent years studying every scrap of information about the Zorn Collective. Their social structures, their communication methods, their deepest psychological weaknesses, all were weaponized into a precision instrument of cognitive warfare. Penetration at 87%, a technician called out. Psychological destabilization protocols are fully active. The Zorn began to experience something unprecedented: doubt. Their collective consciousness, which had always operated with absolute certainty, now found itself questioning fundamental assumptions. Military commanders received conflicting strategic reports. Communication channels filled with impossible scenarios. Every piece of information became a potential threat, every decision a potential catastrophe. A captured Zorn communications officer would later describe the experience as hearing 1,000 contradictory truths simultaneously, each more terrifying than the last. The beauty of the human assault was its total asymmetry. The Zorn expected conventional warfare, ships, weapons, direct confrontation. Instead, they received a total psychological deconstruction. Alina Rodriguez allowed herself the smallest of smiles. This was more than a military strike. This was humanity demonstrating its most powerful weapon, creativity unbound by conventional limitations. Stage 1 complete, Dr. Kapoor announced. Psychological network saturation achieved. The first strike lasted less than 17 minutes, but its effects would reshape the entire conflict. The Zorn Collective had asked for war. Humanity had answered, not with violence, but with something far more terrifying. Pure, unrestrained human imagination. The prototype stood before the advanced research team, looking almost unremarkable at first glance, a sleek bodysuit that seemed no different from standard military gear. But Dr. Marcus Chen knew better. Project Prometheus, he announced to the gathered military and scientific leadership, is humanity's greatest leap forward. The testing ground was a sealed facility carved into the Andes Mountains, a location chosen for its extreme and varied terrain. Outside, a landscape of rock, ice, and thin atmosphere waited to test the limits of human engineering. Lieutenant David Rodriguez, Alina's younger brother, would be the first human test subject. His family's history of pushing boundaries continued, though none knew how far this particular boundary would stretch. The nano-augmentation suit looked deceptively simple. Millions of microscopic adaptive processors woven into a seemingly standard protective layer. But each thread was a marvel of quantum computing, capable of processing and adapting faster than any known technological system. Initialization sequence beginning. Dr. Chen's voice was steady, but his hands betrayed a slight tremor of anticipation. David felt the suit come alive. It wasn't like putting on clothing. It was more like the clothing was becoming part of him. Microscopic neural interfaces connected directly with his nervous system, creating a symbiotic relationship between human biology and advanced technology. The first test was environmental adaptation. The chamber transformed, simulating Arctic conditions, then immediate desert heat, then high-altitude, low-oxygen environments. Where standard human protection would require multiple specialized suits, this single system adapted instantly. David's body temperature remained constant. His breathing never changed. The suit wasn't just protecting him. It was becoming an extension of his own biological systems. Neuralink at 98% efficiency, a technician called out. Adaptive response time, 0.003 milliseconds. The next phase was more extreme. Combat simulations that pushed human potential beyond known limits. David moved through holographic battle scenarios that would have killed a standard soldier a dozen times over. The suit didn't just protect, it anticipated. It learned. It evolved. A Zorn intelligence report intercepted earlier spoke of their combat suits taking months to adapt to a new environment. David's suit was doing it in seconds. Dr. Chen watched the data streams, a look of almost paternal pride on his face. This wasn't just technology. This was the next stage of human evolution. The final test pushed everything to the absolute limit. A full-scale combat simulation against an AI designed to replicate the most advanced alien tactical systems. David became more than a soldier. He became a living weapon system. His movements were liquid poetry, impossible to predict, constantly adapting. The suit read his intentions before he even fully formed them, augmenting his strength, redirecting kinetic energy, compensating for every potential weakness. Remarkable, muttered General Catherine Suzuki. We're not just creating better soldiers. We're creating a new form of human capability. When the simulation ended, the data was almost unbelievable. David had successfully neutralized threats that by all previous military standards should have been insurmountable. The suit had transformed from protection to pure adaptive potential. Dr. Chen approached David, who was still connected to the suit's systems. "How do you feel?" he asked. David's smile was something between human emotion and machine precision. "I feel," he responded, "like we're just getting started." Outside the facility, the first prototypes were already being prepared for mass production. The Zorn Collective believed they were preparing to subjugate a primitive species. They had no idea what was coming. The detention facility was unlike any the Zorn Collective had ever encountered. Located in a converted research campus in New Zealand, it defied every conventional understanding of prisoner management. Zarek, a mid-level Zorn tactical analyst, sat in what could only be described as an impossible room. The walls shifted subtly, displaying abstract art that seemed to change molecular structure with each passing moment. Soft music played, not as background noise, but as a carefully calculated sensory input designed to stimulate neural pathways. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, now leading the Psychological Warfare and Cultural Integration Division, watched through a one-way quantum-encrypted observational interface. Her team wasn't just studying the prisoners. They were systematically deconstructing and rebuilding their entire conceptual understanding of existence. Introduce Cultural Stimulus Package Delta 7. She instructed her lead psychologist, Dr. Aisha Kapoor. The room's environment changed. The walls now displayed a complex tapestry of human artistic expressions, from prehistoric cave paintings to quantum fractal art. Musical compositions that defied the Zorn's rigid understanding of mathematical sound progression filled the space. Zarek's neural pathways began to respond in ways that terrified the Zorn Collective's leadership. The prisoner wasn't being interrogated. It was being exposed to a comprehensive philosophical assault that challenged every fundamental belief of its species. The human capacity for contradiction is their greatest weapon, Dr. Kapoor noted, reviewing the neural response data. Where the Zorn seek absolute order, humans thrive in chaos. Where the Zorn demand rigid hierarchy, humans create complex, adaptive social structures. Each captured Zorn soldier underwent a unique process, It wasn't imprisonment. It was radical cognitive rehabilitation. They were exposed to human art, philosophy, music, and social interactions that systematically dismantled their collective worldview. One particularly fascinating case was Vexenera, a high-ranking Zorn military strategist. After 3 weeks in the facility, she began creating art, something completely forbidden in Zorn culture. Her first creation was a molecular sculpture that represented the concept of individual freedom, a thought so alien to her species that it would have been considered a form of mental illness just months earlier. The detention facility was producing something far more dangerous than traditional prisoners. It was creating cultural vectors, beings who would return to their civilization with ideas more destructive than any weapon. General Catherine Suzuki reviewed the reports with a mixture of fascination and strategic calculation. "We're not just fighting a war," she told Alina. "We're conducting a species-level intervention." Some captured Zorn began requesting to learn human languages. Others developed interests in disciplines that had no equivalent in their own culture: poetry, abstract mathematics, improvisational music. They were discovering concepts of individual identity that their collective consciousness had never permitted. A breakthrough came with a group of Zorn philosophers who began to challenge their own species' fundamental belief systems. They started creating underground communication networks, sharing ideas that would have been considered treasonous mere weeks earlier. Humanity's greatest weapon, Dr. Kapoor explained in her classified report, is not our technology. It's our ability to inspire reimagination. The Zorn leadership watched in growing horror as their captured soldiers began to transform. These weren't prisoners. They were agents of a philosophical revolution more devastating than any military conquest. Alina Rodriguez allowed herself a small smile. They had asked for war. Humanity was delivering something far more profound, a total reimagination of what was possible. The real battle was never about territory or resources. It was about the fundamental nature of consciousness itself. And humanity was winning. The Kepler 452-bit system was never meant to be a battlefield. A marginal exoplanet with extreme geological instability, it had been considered worthless by most spacefaring civilizations. The Zorn Collective had marked it as a potential resource extraction site. Humanity saw something entirely different. Captain Alina Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the U.S. Prometheus, her neural interface humming with data streams that would have overwhelmed any other species. Around her, a crew that was more symbiotic machine-human hybrid than traditional military personnel prepared for what would become the most pivotal engagement of the war. Geological destabilization protocols are primed, Lieutenant David Rodriguez reported, his voice a calm blend of human intuition and computational precision. The siblings worked in perfect synchronization, their augmented bodies and minds an extension of humanity's most advanced technological potential. The Zorn fleet approached with typical mathematical certainty, massive ships of crystalline geometry, each one a marvel of traditional engineering. They expected a standard planetary invasion, systematic, predictable, overwhelming. They were wrong. Humanity's strategy defied every conventional understanding of warfare. The planet itself became a weapon. Dr. Marcus Chen's team had spent months studying Kepler 452-bits' unique geological composition. Every fault line, every volcanic system, every potential energy release had been mapped and wavenized. The planet was no longer just a location. It was a living combat system. As the first Zorn ships entered the planetary atmosphere, the ground began to move. Massive tectonic shifts occurred with mathematical precision. Volcanic systems that had been dormant for millions of years awakened with targeted eruptions. Energy signatures redirected through quantum-entangled geological networks transformed the entire planet into a dynamic, adaptive combat environment. Zorn ships found themselves caught in massive electromagnetic storms that shouldn't have been possible. Geological formations shifted, creating natural barriers and offensive conduits that rewrote the very concept of battlefield terrain. Adaptive terrain manipulation at 92% efficiency, David called out. The planet was responding to human strategic inputs faster than the Zorn could process. Alina watched as entire Zorn battle groups found themselves trapped in geological formations that seemed to anticipate their every movement. Massive lava flows redirected with impossible precision. Electromagnetic pulses generated from the planet's core disabled alien systems before they could even activate defensive protocols. It wasn't just a battle. It was a total reimagining of combat. A Zorn fleet commander, later recovered and studied, would describe the experience as fighting against a living planet that seemed to think with human intelligence. Each moment brought a new impossibility. Terrain that shouldn't move, energy signatures that defied known physical laws, a battlefield that was simultaneously weapon, defense, and living organism. They asked for war. Alina muttered, watching the tactical displays. We're giving them something they cannot comprehend. The engagement lasted less than 3 standard hours. When it concluded, the Zorn had lost over 73% of their invasion force. Not to traditional weapons, not to superior technology, to a planet that had been transformed into a weapon of pure human imagination. Quantum communication networks carried the news across human-controlled space. This wasn't just a victory. It was a statement. A declaration that humanity understood something fundamental about existence that the Zorn collective could never grasp. Adaptability, creativity, the ability to turn any limitation into an opportunity. As the last Zorn ships retreated, Captain Alina Rodriguez allowed herself the smallest of smiles. They had asked for war. Humanity was just getting started. The Zorn Collective's central governance complex was a marvel of architectural precision, a massive crystalline structure that had stood unchanged for millennia. Now it trembled with an emotion the collective had never experienced before. Fear. Executor Prime Axetold reviewed the cascading failure reports. Each data stream was a knife edge of impossible contradictions. Entire military divisions were fragmenting. Strategic networks collapsed. The unified consciousness that had defined the Zorn Collective for thousands of years was coming apart at the molecular level. We are experiencing total systemic breakdown, reported Vexnera, the former military strategist who had been transformed by human psychological warfare. Her very presence in the central chamber was an act of rebellion, a living testament to humanity's capacity to break the unbreakable. The humans had done something far more devastating than destroy ships or capture territories. They had introduced a virus far more dangerous than any biological or technological weapon. Doubt. Individual member species of the Zorn Collective began to question their fundamental existence. The Krelltheri, a silicon-based species that had been a cornerstone of the collective for 7 generations, were the first to officially request separation. Their transmission was a masterpiece of quiet defiance. We have witnessed the human capacity for reimagination. Our previous understanding of existence is no longer sufficient. Dr. Alina Rodriguez watched the unfolding collapse from a quantum-encrypted observation station. Her team of psychological warfare specialists had transformed from military operatives to something closer to philosophical architects. It's not about destroying them, she explained to General Catherine Suzuki. It's about giving them the opportunity to destroy themselves. The most terrifying weapon humanity had developed wasn't a physical instrument of war. It was the simple, devastating concept of individual choice. Zorn communication networks, once a perfect crystalline web of unified thought, now resembled a shattered hologram. Each fragment told a different story. Some species began documenting their experiences with humans. Others started creating art, a concept completely alien to their previous collective existence. Axetold realized the true horror of their situation. Humanity hadn't just attacked their military. They had attacked the very concept of collective consciousness. Strategic simulations became useless. Predictive algorithms collapsed. The more the Zorn tried to understand human strategy, the more their own systems destabilized. A captured Zorn philosopher, a concept that would have been impossible mere months ago, described the experience as discovering individual consciousness is like learning to breathe after believing you could only exist underwater. The fracturing happened with mathematical precision, yet was utterly unpredictable. Military divisions requested cultural exchange programs. Research collectives began studying human art and philosophy. The very concept of the Zorn Collective became a liability. We are experiencing total paradigm dissolution, Vexnera reported, her voice a blend of terror and exhilaration. Humanity has weaponized imagination itself. Elena Rodriguez understood something fundamental. This wasn't just a war. It was an evolutionary intervention. As the Zorn Collective's unified consciousness began to fragment, something new emerged. Not defeat, not surrender. A transformation. The humans had asked a simple question when first confronted. You ask for war. Now the Zorn were learning the true meaning of that question. Humanity wasn't just fighting a war. They were teaching a species how to be truly alive. The peace conference wasn't held in a traditional diplomatic hall. Instead, it took place on a specially constructed space station, a neutral ground that symbolized the complete transformation of galactic politics. Captain Elena Rodriguez stood at the center of a circular chamber, surrounded by representatives from what remained of the Zorn Collective and dozens of other alien species. Her presence was more than military. She had become a living symbol of humanity's unprecedented approach to conflict and coexistence. We didn't want this war, Elena began, her voice carrying the weight of millions who had fought and sacrificed. But we were prepared to fight it in a way no one could have anticipated. The chamber itself was a testament to human innovation. Adaptive walls shifted with holographic displays, showing the complex journey of the conflict. Not a glorification of violence, but a brutal, honest accounting of how humanity had fundamentally altered the understanding of interstellar civilization. Dr. Marcus Chen stood nearby, the architect of technologies that had redefined the boundaries of biological and technological potential. Beside him, General Catherine Suzuki represented the military strategy that had turned the tide of the conflict. Representatives from former Zorn member species told their stories. The Krell theory spoke of discovering individual identity. The Vexnera Collective shared how human psychological techniques had broken their rigid hierarchical structure, allowing for unprecedented personal growth. Humanity did not conquer us, one alien representative stated. You showed us how to conquer ourselves. The peace agreements were unlike any in galactic history. They weren't about territory or resources, but about establishing a new framework of interspecies understanding. Humanity insisted on programs of cultural exchange, technological sharing, and individual rights for all species. Dr. Aisha Kapoor presented the psychological research that had been fundamental to the conflict, how humanity's greatest strength was its ability to adapt, to reimagine, to see potential where others saw only limitation. We didn't win through superior firepower, she explained. We won by demonstrating that consciousness is not about control, but about potential. The adaptive technologies developed during the war were now being shared. Nano-augmentation systems that could help species overcome physical limitations. Quantum communication networks that broke down previous barriers of understanding. Lieutenant David Rodriguez demonstrated the human augmentation suits, no longer weapons, but tools of exploration and mutual understanding. Each technological marvel was a bridge between species, not a barrier. Elena Rodriguez's final statement would be recorded in galactic historical archives. You asked for war. We gave you something far more dangerous, the opportunity to reimagine what's possible. The station's adaptive walls displayed a montage. The initial confrontation, the psychological warfare, the technological innovations, the gradual transformation. Not a story of conquest, but of evolution. As the conference concluded, it was clear that humanity had done something unprecedented. They hadn't just won a war. They had fundamentally altered the trajectory of galactic civilization. The Zorn Collective was no more. In its place, a new framework of interspecies cooperation emerged, one that prioritized individual potential, cultural exchange, and the fundamental right of every conscious being to grow, to change, to reimagine. Outside the station, stars continue their ancient dance. Civilizations would rise and fall. But something had changed. Humanity had shown the universe that the most powerful weapon is not destruction. It's imagination. #epilogue. They had asked for war. Humanity had answered with something far more profound.